Many thanks to you, Emir Ajayi, for that backgrounder and also for the Vox Pop. We have guests with us in the studios as well as at our Ibadan Network Center to discuss these issues in further detail. First, let's welcome the Commissioner of Police, FCT Command, that's Bala Chiroma. CP Chiroma, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios is Bishop Michael Akbami, who is Secretary of the Christian Association of Nigeria, FCT. Lord Bishop, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, sir.
Okay. And Chairman, League of Imams Initiative, also in the Federal Capital Territory, Dr. Tajuddin Adigun. I'd like to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Happy to be with you.
All right.
And also joining us on Good Morning Nigeria is the Executive Director, Ubuntu Center for Africa, Peace Building and Development, and former Director General, Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, Professor Oshita. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Professor Benjamin Osawe Ehige, Professor of Psychology, University of Ibadan, is also with us. He's joining us from Ibadan. That is, you're welcome, sir.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Professor Benjamin Osawe is joining us from Ibadan Network Center. Let's get started, gentlemen, and then see how or what justice we can do to the end SARS protest, suing for peace, as our topic this morning. Let me start off with the, FCT Commissioner of Police, Bala Chiroma. As you're getting seated, getting settled here, you said you really want to have some few times with us and leave and then get back to the streets. You don't want to be accused of being off the streets. Really, what do you want to go and do on the streets? So much so that you have little time for us here.
Well, as we're all aware, there's a lot to be done in terms of provision of security. Marching orders have been given by Inspector General of Police that law and order must be asserted. And I think that is my concentration for now.
Okay, now, if we should now get down to the topic and see what's up there. A lot has really happened in the past 3 weeks in this country, and of course, tempers have risen, a lot of things have happened, and a lot of people have, been arrested, and then people have, gotten into hiding, and so many other things about this NSAS protest. And now people are trying to heal up the wounds of this protest, and the issue now at stake, especially on this channel, the NTA, and of course this morning, is suing for peace. How do we de-escalate this protest?
Well, it's been quite turbulent for the past 3 weeks. We've had issues where groups or the NSAS then going into hoodlums, attacking warehouses, so on and so forth, making life inconvenient for other Nigerians. It's really been a challenge, and we've really had to deploy to ensure that things are brought under control. You cannot assert yourselves without ensuring that due process of the law is followed. As you made mention, in order to assert ourselves, we've been able to make arrests, and the next stage will be prosecution. That is the process, that will be the initial stages of ensuring that reconciliation takes place, because there are aggrieved people and whose properties have been whose rights have also been trampled by the protesters.
Well, in the FCT, CP, what is the security situation report? We keep hearing about tension and even acts of vandalism in suburbs such as Gwagwalada and Kubwa. What do we know at this time?
Well, indeed, they're true that palliative warehouses were visited by groups, allegedly protesters. We've been able to assert ourselves in both locations and been able to effect arrests. I've been able to make some recoveries of properties that were looted from those locations. And I assure you that all those arrested will be accordingly prosecuted.
What do we know, for instance, also about what went on before the assault or an attack on warehouses and private properties in terms of the burning of vehicles in the Akpo axis, for instance, of the capital city?
Well, as I told you, as I said earlier on, we've commenced the process of investigations. We'll ensure that we get to the root of the matter and also bring those people that were responsible for that act to book.
Is the Federal Capital Territory tense? I mean, let's put it starkly. Should residents and visitors to the FCT feel at ease, or they should be on their guard?
I think we've been able to demonstrate the fact that we're on top of the situation with the arrest that we've made. We will soon be arraigning them in court. We've ensured that we've stopped the further breakdown of law and order, any breakdown of law and order. And therefore, that should give room, that should give hope to residents of FCT to be hopeful, to be confident that security has been restored in their city.
Well, CP Bala, before we let you go, the police, as the saying always goes, and the dictum is that the police is the friend of the public and the friend of the people. And that has been so much exemplified in the way you've so much conducted yourself, especially during this NSAS protest. But all the same, there are so many other negatives that have been linked to or alleged to the police in this case. But that notwithstanding, I just want to ask you this. While you're trying to protect the people and be their friend as well, how should Nigerians, what kind of advice will you give to Nigerians as regards they themselves protecting themselves from hoodlums and other criminals, especially in these trying times?
I think in these trying times, what we've tried to do always, as always, is that remind people and members of the public that there is need for them to render us utmost cooperation for us to be able to secure them. And therefore, the situation still remains the same now. We want members of the public to cooperate with us in terms of information so that we'll be able to move in and quell whatever insecurity situation that might arise. We also want to engage members of the public so that at least they have words, and these words they could also talk to their words to also assist in ensuring that they are not involved in acts of criminality.
What are the hotlines to access in any eventuality?
Well, we've already given our control room numbers, which are about 4, and severally they've been on your screen. But we have the national hotline, which is 112. That is the National Emergency Center. That could be linked to our own control room.
So 112 is still available in this?
Very much available.
Earlier, while we were reviewing our newspapers this morning, we did reference one of the headlines from the Punch newspaper with regard to the directive by the Inspector General of Police that the police officers and various commands should take charge once more of the public space, but that this would appear not to have been fully complied with in a number of instances. And one of the reasons adduced for this has been said to be the current state of morale of policemen on account of the consequences of the violence on the heels of the NSAS protests. What is the state of the feeling of your men and officers here in the FCT?
Well, I don't think it has to do with any morale. What you have to consider is that the dynamics of our postings just had to change because of the operational requirements. You find that when you have a situation whereby thousands of people have invaded or intending to invade a warehouse, you just don't post 1 or 2 policemen. You have to scoop policemen that you have to ensure that you give adequate posting to that particular location. So maybe in that regards, people may tend to see that there are no policemen on the streets. You deploy based on intelligence so that you're able to contain situations before they get out of hand and cause uncertainties in society.
When you talk about, asking the public to really cooperate with the police by way of giving useful information, especially in these times of that people have tried to, loot government offices, warehouses of people and the rest of them. Video footage show that there are so many people that could be seen and be caught there, given the pictures we see. And some are even arrogantly coming out to talk about these things they're doing. And secondly, the issue of giving the police information in this country has been so much a daisy one in such a way that, or so much so that people are afraid for fear of being part or culpable in the whole crime itself. Now, how are addressing these two? I'm talking about the video footage, looking at the, the importance of ICT in this regard, which the police can very much leverage on. And then the public fear that if I should divulge some information about my neighbor who went in to steal or to pick, certain item from the warehouse, I may be part of the whole thing. How would you react to this?
You see, the video footage is a very useful tool for us in terms of investigations, especially in this instance. So many video footages have been around, and you'll be able to see clearly where identify people that were committing crimes live. That will assist us greatly when we come to investigate, as we've commenced investigations. In terms of giving information to the police, it's not only coming directly or coming to the station directly to give information. These days, technology has made it so easy that you could also just phone, call, and give whatever information you want. We have email addresses where you can, we've displayed them, where you can send such information to. We've also in FCT gone ahead to kind of provide security to members of the public, where we will have no link with you when you give us information. We've placed information boxes in different locations within FCT, where you can just go write your information without any link to you. Just drop in the information boxes. It's our responsibility to pick it, filter the information you've given us, and utilize accordingly.
Well, CP, I know that in terms of law enforcement, there are clear lines, there are clear rules. So we've heard in the course of recent looting of warehouses and public and private facilities, there have also been calls on persons who took away items to return them. I'm just wondering, if you see the sheer number of invaders of the warehouses and those who also vandalize public property, if you were to have the capacity of arresting all of them and then trying to prosecute them, first, you won't have a courtroom that can contain all of them, and you're unlikely to have prison facilities or correctional facilities that will accommodate all of these persons. So let's assume that one of the looters who got misguided went there, took some items, participated in all the stuff, and now listening to the appeals for them to return whatever they took, can they come to you to return those items without the risk or fear of being apprehended and, as the police will say, come behind the counter?
God will consider each situation based on its merit. I assure you that we've commenced investigations. Information has not been short to us. By receiving information, and accordingly we'll act on that. And in situations where people come to return goods, the fact still remains that did you commit an offense or not? We'll get our legal experts to look at it, and then we decide what to do in such a situation.
Well, that's why I said the lines are clear, because if you took the item in the first instance, a clear case of stealing, no question about that. Or if you attempted to break into a warehouse, that is still an offense. But I was just wondering, under the current special circumstances, the NYC, for instance, the camp was raided yesterday. There was no palliative in a mattress, but people took away mattresses and all kinds of things. And the camp commandant was saying, look, return those items. They are meant for camping. So if people now begin to return the mattresses, I think, but that's not your jurisdiction. In Cross River, I saw them taking an orthopedic mattress from one of the houses of a former senator, 6x6 or 7x7. What they were going to do with that, I wouldn't know. But somebody says, all right, no, I've been touched by the Holy Spirit, otherwise let me return it. What happens?
That is what I told you. We'll conclude our investigations, and the legal experts will look at it and deal with it accordingly. But the fact remains that a crime has been committed.
On a final note, CP Balap, you shall be leaving us very soon. What's your word to residents of FCT, most especially, and to Nigerians generally, about the need really, and serious need for that matter, to sue for peace this time around?
It is very important for us to allow peace reign. Without peace, we can't make any meaningful progress in terms of development. Our economy is already being affected by this uprising. Therefore, there's utmost need for all hands to be on deck to ensure that peace fully resumed situation resumes normally so that we can make progress in our development as a nation.
All right. On that note, we'd like to appreciate Balachi Roma, Commissioner of Police, FCT Command. We'd like to thank you for being part of our discussion this morning, and you have our best wishes as you get back on the beat.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We earlier introduced our other guest. A moment ago, you saw Professor Benjamin Ahige, psychologist at the University of Ibadan, Professor Oshita, peace building expert and former Director General of the Institute of Peace and Conflict here also in Abuja with us, Bishop Akpami and Dr. Tajuddin Adigun, Chairman League of Imams Initiative, also in the FCT. They are also guests with us. Let's of course, now come to our studios, Nadabo, and then just begin to get our guests to give us a sense of what is happening. This is a traumatic period for the country. What started as peaceful protests got hijacked, and unfortunately, we have seen the horrendous losses that have occurred, human and material. Not just the epicenter of the protest, but now with the looting of warehouses and destruction of private property, we're also seeing the consequences in other parts of the country. How do you apprehend this season of near anomy in our country? Let's begin with Bishop Michael Akpami.
Thank you so much. It's obviously very disheartening what we're seeing in our country at this point in time, with the NSAS protest being hijacked, and now it has turned to a very violent phase of in our country, and it's quite disheartening what we're seeing, and definitely this is not of God, because God is a God of law and order. And where there's so much disorder at this point in time, anarchy setting in, we know an enemy has done this, and there's a need to put a stop to the anarchy, the disorder that we're seeing in the country. God is a God of peace, and he would want us to promote peace.
Tajuddin, what would you say?
Well, we give thanks to Almighty God for sparing our lives to witness today, and then to appreciate God the Almighty for giving us the wisdom to discuss, like we are discussing now, on way forward. The protest started organized with a meaningful purpose. Unfortunately, the situation is fast degenerating. And then religiously, when we talk of the holy books, God himself is peace. He commanded us to live in peace. And that's why in Islamic teaching, the greatest act of worship you have, apart from believing in God himself, is prayers on a daily basis. These prayers is teaching you to be peaceful. That's why when you terminate your prayers, you said, Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum, peace, peace. When you meet with a fellow human being, you communicate peace. When you knock at the door of any other person, you mention peace. You are a peacemaker. Unfortunately, the situation is what we are witnessing now. Now, people must be calmed by reminding them of these principles, which they are aware of. Is because of selfish interest that make people to behaving as they are behaving now. So I believe leaders should do a lot. We, the followers, also must do a lot, because you cannot achieve peace, because peace is very expensive. There are some ingredients that makes peace actually to exist. When these ingredients are not there, then automatically it's not a magic. Our leaders must be fair, must listen, must accommodate. In fact, the leadership has exhibited what actually the religion is teaching. When the protesters have a claim that SARS should be crushed, the president make very clear announcement. The IG supported it. Everybody is aware. I think if there is no hidden agenda, if there is no actually bad elements who are not wishing good for this country, I think the situation couldn't have degenerated to this level. And we, the followers too, should know it is compulsory on us to give the leadership their right, that is obeying them. In the Quran, Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. O you who believe, obey your creator, obey the messenger, obey your leaders. Because if there is no obedience, if there is no respect, if there is no honor for the leadership, then automatically the situation will continue to generate. So what the religious leaders will appeal to the Nigerians generally is for us to know that Nigeria belongs to us. If we use our own hand to destroy it, then we are going to have the consequence. And if we have the mind of peace, then automatically we are going to have the benefit. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Tajuddin Adigun. Let's go over now to our Ibadan Network Center, where we will introduce Professor Benjamin Ehige of the Department of Psychology at UI. Professor Ehige, we do know that most parts of the country have been in shock and just near anarchy, particularly in recent days on account of protests and looting and arson. How does a society begin to recollect its or regain its collective sanity, having gone through this kind of horrendous atrocities that we have seen in the past couple of weeks?
For the society, it is quite unfortunate of what has happened. And in one way or the other, it's affected every individual, whether directly or indirectly. And as such, every individual has been placed in a traumatic situation, whereby as you go out, you are not so sure of coming back the same way you went. Your items at home, those who are business people, they are not so sure of the security of these items. So in fact, the society is in a great state of chaos. And peace can only be restored with every hand on the deck. Every hand in the sense that individuals need to put their hands on deck. The government has to, the security personnel have to, and so on. But before then, we have to examine or investigate the cause of this uproar. It is true that we might not have really experienced as offensive uproar as we had in these few weeks past. There were issues. Now, not until these issues are addressed, not until these issues are attended to, as a psychologist, there is the prediction that there might be a reoccurrence. And what are these issues? The issues are centered on the youths. Before now, for instance, people go to schools, they graduate from the universities, they have jobs awaiting them. But what do we see today? People graduate, they are not sure of employment. People graduate while they were in schools, their parents took loans, some of them took loans, some of them were engaged in odd jobs with the expectations that after acquisition of education, the sky would be their limit. But what do we find in Nigeria? It is the opposite. These are demoralizing. And these are the forces that acted, that propel the activities of these youths into what happened. So not until these issues are addressed, there's the tendency of a reoccurrence of what we have experienced. So I would want to encourage parents and so on to see how, and the government, to see how the needs of these youths can be attended to. And this can only be made possible when there is a thorough analysis of the needs of these youths, beginning from the grassroots level, beginning from the local government level, the state level, and the federal level. What are these needs? What are the issues that are influencing the cognition of these youths, that are somehow affecting their emotions, leading to the actions which they exhibited in these few weeks? These things have to be looked into, or else, I don't know, we might be expecting something worse than what had happened. I think what has happened is just to give attention to our understanding so that it will be visited. And I'm sure the youths, they are not as bad as they are conceived. The youths are understanding. They only need someone who will understand them, understand their situations, and be able to come up with projects that could ameliorate all these challenges which they are passing through.
The NSAS protest started on good intention, and it seems as if along the lines so many things went wrong, and that's why we find ourselves today. The NSAS protest, had no religious coloration or tribal coloration from the start. It had one thing in common, and that was the issue of youths, trying to, get their rights, if I may use that very word properly, and then see how they can be part of the new Nigeria. But other side, the religious leaders in the studio here talked about peace, and they've been preaching peace, and they continue to preach peace. As a psychologist, let's look at the peace issue and then see how far this can go in trying to, ameliorate the situation. Islam and Christianity talk about peace, and then they, preach peace. Psychologically speaking, what would you say is the fault, given the fact that those that acted or partook in these lootings and the arson and the rest of them are both Muslims and Christians? So what went wrong? What's wrong with the psychology? How would you describe that?
This psychology is what we may refer to as a sort of a crowd psychology or mob psychology, which has to do with the behaviors of individuals being influenced by a larger group. Like we saw in the scenario, in the scene, individuals came together. Who are these individuals? These are individuals who believe that they have some similarities in terms of their challenges. These are individuals who see themselves as youths, and they have a common problems. Now, when this end-SARS came about, what really happened? Before now, we know it. It's a challenging thing being a youth in Nigeria. Whenever any offense is committed, the first point of contact is the youth within certain age groups. And that's why even myself at home, I always encourage my son, when you go out, be well dressed. Ensure that you tidy up your face, because these are some of the signals which the investigators, the police, they will see, can just arrest any individual. There was a terrible case of an undergraduate student who came for an exam, a distant learning student, came for an exam. He was going back home. He didn't have sufficient money. He stood by the wayside waiting for vehicles that would take him down. All of a sudden, these SARS people came, they picked him up, and they said he was one of those that robbed somewhere. For 2 sessions, this student could not sit for his exam. Things like that. Many others had passed through it. So when this NSAS issue came, as many people that are directly being affected or indirectly affected, they came together as one. And that is what leads to the crowd psychology. Individuals lost their identity in a way because the group has taken over. Now, there's always the psychology of strength with group size. As it became a crowd, they perceived themselves as above the law. They perceive certain authority and power which they possessed. And this motivated or reinforced them into various activities. And in this type of group, there's what we call a sense of anonymity, whereby you believe that anything you do cannot be associated with you. Whatever behavior you put up cannot be identified with you. Even if there is any investigation, you would not be identified. So this, in a way, motivates people into indulging in behaviors which they've never indulged before. There's also the loss of sense of responsibility, whereby even those that have been morally oriented, they are influenced by other members of the crowd, making them to behave the way they did. And this leads to what we refer to as social influence. There is this influence from other members of the group. People are no longer themselves. People their personality is already contaminated by the influence of others. And what happens? In psychology, we have what we call 3 aspects of personality. We have the id, the ego, and superego. In the course of these activities, the id impulse, which seeks for immediate gratification, comes up. And that is why, although the initial intention of those who started it was to express themselves, and that's what we refer to as expressive crowd or expressive mob. It's just to express themselves. But along the line, another group came up, infiltrated into this group. And this is the group we refer to as the destructive group or the aggressive group. Their own intention is only to go out to destroy. We also have the acquisitive groups, those who want to go out to acquire things. And that's where we experience this looting and so on. These are various behaviors that came up in the course of these NSAS protests. Now, for there to be peace, like I heard the Commissioner of Police was saying, that even those who might return whatever things they looted and so on, they have to be tried by the law. For me, a way you can encourage and reinforce, because we believe in psychology of reinforcement, to reinforce the return of such stolen items is by giving a leeway within a particular period. Those who carted what they took, they can bring it or bring them and they will not be prosecuted. Why? Because some of them acted out of duress. It was a sort of stimulus response situation whereby you saw some people behaving in a certain way, you modeled their behavior and acted the way they did without even appreciation of their cognition of what they had done. After they have done it, it's like their senses have returned to them. What have I done? This is not supposed to be. So I want to encourage the system, if it is possible, should give a period. Those who looted, let them return and they will not be tried, they will not be prosecuted. After then, you can go about investigation, trying to identify other people. With this, I think there will be peace. Then with the security personnel, especially the police, we can observe now there's an instruction that they should go back to the roads. They should go back to the society and perform their duties. They are reluctant going. Why? Because the way the society reacted towards them. It's true that we had some misdemeanor with some police officers, but not all. At the end, even some innocent ones were killed. Imagine some police officers, tires put on their head, and they lit fire on them. What you do to criminals, doing it to security men who risk their lives and their family members to ensure that there is security, that there is peace in the system. It was quite appalling. So the police also, they have to be attended to. Most times also the society, we just look at the police as the individual. We do not put into cognizance the environment in which they work. If you have interacted with these police officers, you will discover that they pass through a lot of stress. And provisions are not made on stress management for these police personnel. Do they have weapons that could counter what the criminals, what they have? What about their work environment? Even from their educational setting. I once visited a Nigerian police academy in Kano on national assignment. I saw the environment where they learn. And as a psychologist, I wasn't happy. Because the environment where you live, the environment where you study has great influence on your behavior. I was just wondering how someone will undergo training under such environment and come up and become a good police officer. It's not possible. Have you visited the police barracks? I happen to have friends who live in the police barracks. Their environment is appalling. They don't have tidy environment. The roads in the barracks, they are so bad. The toilets are not there, the bathrooms are not there, kitchens are not there, laundry, they are all bad. Even the roof, you have leaking roof. And you expect people to work under such environment and they should come out and be a steadfast police officers. It is challenging. These are some of the things we should look into, the environment in which they work. However, there's a need to come up with a synergy between the public and the police. I still believe there are many good police officers who are there. All that is needed is for them also to be given adequate training.
All right, Professor Ege, thank you very much there for the insights that you have provided. Not that, but just before we bring in Professor Oshita, while Professor Ege was talking about crime psychology and how you relate that to the amnesty that the looters should have in returning whatever items they took, because they appeared not to be acting on their own will. You saw what happened in Adamawa. I mean, I saw the footage on the social media where the looters, I don't know whether they were looking for palliatives, attacked the customs headquarters in Adamawa. Maybe one of them was a welder because they were taking away burglar bars. What are you going to do with a burglar bar? Maybe you're going to smelt it and then utilize it for other purposes. Some were taking away glasses and all kinds of other items. I would just hope that the authorities are listening because, as I indicated, I'm a lawyer, and then how many of these persons can you actually prosecute?
And that's really a very, very, very valid point he made, talking about giving the leeway, leeway for those who participated in this looting and the rest of them. He gave reasons why some of them acted, you know, mob action, peer group influence, and so many other things. Not that naturally or inherently they are thieves or criminals or whatever. So in order to get these things back, and then we're suing for peace, and I think we should all work towards that. Absolutely. The authorities should know that given the leeway for them to bring these things back and not be prosecuted, it's a good way or good start for these things to happen. Professor Oshita, you've had this discussion and insight from, Professor, what's his name right there?
Ehige.
Yeah, Ehige, Osawari Ehige from Ibadan. He gave us a lot of insights into these things, and of course, a lot more needs to be done by the authorities concerned, the police, for instance, and even the government. Talking about state governments now, in whose domain these things took place. But all the same, there are indications that suing for peace in this environment we are at the moment may not really be fast enough if some other, some other concessions are not made. What's your take on that? And what concessions do you think should be made in order to hasten the process of suing for peace in this country?
Thank you very much for having me. And I quite agree with the analysis that has been made by Professor Ehige. Being a psychologist, he has done well, to bring out some of the complications that are involved in the situation we have found ourselves in this country. And I think we are again not on the right path, especially in the aspect of, invoking the punitive, logic of law enforcement. As has been highlighted by Kingsley, the issue of how many of these people can you try? These are not normal times. And we must emphasize that these are not normal times. Now, on a normal day, as we often say in Nigeria, we say our detention centers are overflowing. How do we hope to deal with all of these people across this country? Are we setting realistic targets for ourselves across the country? I think we are not. And I say this with a deep sense of responsibility because insisting on punishing offenders in this situation simply means that we have not taken a total appraisal of the circumstances we have found ourselves. I think we are collectively guilty. everyone in this country. We are guilty, and we need to show, a sense of remorse, and then start from a clean slate. Everyone must have certain degree of amnesty in this context, because we all contributed one way or the other. And in this regard, I have watched this event, and sometimes I look at the police as a victim. The police is simply a victim. This protest could have started from any angle of our, any sector of our system, and will still. So using the police and NSAS in particular as a metaphor, for me, I think it's just coincidental, because people could have started from any other aspect of our public life. Things are not easy with a lot of people. And even as we are here in this studio, I know that people are here who can say a lot of things that are not all right. So I say we are collectively guilty. And in that context, I think we need to exhibit the willingness to accept what we have done wrong, individually and collectively. So, in suing for peace, that is the minimum that we all have to acknowledge. As a peace practitioner, I do not think that we can sit here and say, okay, arrest 1,000 in Calabar, arrest 1,000 in, of course, there are going to be far more than that from the crowds we saw. From Ibadan, Ondo, Ogun, Adamawa. It's going to be an impossible task. So let us, as a nation, get some fundamentals that we deal with the specific situation we have found ourselves. It happened in Rwanda. When Gacaca was brought into, the system, when it was introduced, there were a lot of arguments for 1 year. The debate was on whether the International Criminal Court for Rwanda and the national court system were enough to deal with the situation. But of course, in the end, they found out that Gacaca needed to be introduced as a third dimension. In the end, Gacaca was what dealt with 90% of the issues that had to do with the genocide of Rwanda in 1994. So
Explain that to our viewers.
yeah, well,
Gacaca, yes.
Gacaca was like something, a traditional system of conflict resolution, which now became necessary because the crowd, was too much that, the International Criminal Court system for Rwanda and the national courts had to deal with. So if Gacaca was not introduced, Gacaca was simply a system whereby people acknowledged that they all had wronged each other. And that is where I was talking about the collective guilt. We all accept that we have done something wrong. Let us, apologize for that. Because if we don't do that, we can't start with reconciliation. That must be done, So I believe that in the situation we have found ourselves, we need to, yes, this is a federation, a federal system. So states have their own ways, a leeway to how to deal with their own specific situation. But there must be general principles that must come from the federal government, that this ill wind that has come into our country and has, animated so many negative things that have been lying, that have been underground. We should apply so and so, principles as basic minimum. So I believe that we should look at it again. There are many people who can offer advice. In fact, I have watched several TV programs and read a lot of people have, put wonderful ideas out there. But I have found out from my experience in this country that there is no place, and I think there is no place, where somebody is collating all of this and makes sense of it. So it all goes in the air. In the end, we are not harnessing the resources that we have through our media charts, through, social media and all of that to say, okay, can we utilize so and so? And then put it at a level where everybody will say, okay, this is where we can start and move on.
Okay, Professor Oshita, thank you very much. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. I want to bring in again Bishop Michael Akpame. Bishop Akpame, earlier, one of the points you made was that our God is a God of peace. And Allah, of course, is also an Allah of peace. But how then do we begin to recover from the anger and trauma that we have experienced in recent weeks?
Well, I think an attitudinal change will help us. The Bible, for instance, says the kingdom of God is not meat and drink, but righteousness. Now, when we imbibe righteousness, the ways of God, we do what is right, it leads to peace. The kingdom of God is righteousness, peace, and then joy. So we must imbibe a culture of doing what is right. Righteousness will exalt the nation. And where there is righteousness, peace will prevail. And where peace prevails, joy will abound. So I think all of us, for instance, driving along the road and then the traffic light says stop, let me do the right thing. I stop. Anger, all of us can express our anger. But the scripture guides us on how to handle anger. Anger dwells in the bosom of fools. And then the Bible also says, okay, be angry, but don't sin. You're angry, you can express your anger, but don't do what is wrong. Don't destroy people's property. Don't destroy lives. Let not your anger lead you into sin. You must be able to allow the help of God so that your anger, like the Bible will tell us, the sun does not set and you are still boiling in anger. You just should follow the path of Scripture, trust God for help, trust God for grace. We have been offended. The youths have been offended. There are genuine reasons to be angry. But our help comes from God, not from man. And we must therefore trust God to give us a better Nigeria.
Trusting God to give us a better Nigeria. That's a good one from, from the books and, of course, from Michael Okpami, the Bishop, Secretary, Christian Association of Nigeria. But I would want us to dwell a little on this trusting in God, given the fact that now people are more or less in the state of confusion, I would say, in the sense that there's curfew all over the place on most states, especially where these lootings took place. And the police are looking for those who engage in the looting. And apprehension is still there. Now, how do you marry this in trying to reconcile, between these feelings of guilt, feeling of wanting to be captured by the police, or having to return the things I've taken, not stolen, and bringing in the issue of making me feel free once again and sue for peace with my neighbors? Bishop.
Well, what is right is right. If I have sinned against God and have broken the laws in the land, I should do all within my power to make peace. I believe in restitution. If you have done wrong, then, and you are convicted, return what was stolen. you have a stolen property with you, I think that exposes you to the greatest of all thieves, who is the devil. And the Bible calls him a thief, and that means he can invade your life at any time, invade your property at any time. He can impact the lives of your children, generations after you, because you opened the gate to him. So why keep a stolen property when you know that you'll be mortgaging your future, generations after you, and God may judge you when you go to the other side after death. So it's important you make peace with God, make peace with men. Well, like we are hoping that the security authorities will open their hearts and pardon men. But it's better you suffer here than to suffer for eternity. So making peace with God, it's important, it's critical. Making peace with men is important, and it is critical. In fact, there's scripture that says, hey, when you go into the altar and there you remember your brother has something against you, leave your sacrifice there. Go make peace and then come back. Peace is very important in the heart of God. And we also should consider it very important.
All right, thank you very much, Bishop Akpame. Just before we go on this short break, let's also get the perspective of Dr. Tajuddin Adigun. In our search for peace in a season of anger and trauma, what should be the spiritual recourse?
Well, as rightly mentioned by speakers before me, that the situation is not the normal situation we are in now. The CP's idea, Madam Balachuruma, must be respected, because when you are talking on behalf of a field, you are professional in it, you must actually say exactly what is obtainable. You shouldn't go about telling people what actually will give them happiness, while it's not the reality. If all the CPs in this country will go about telling the looters that we have excuse for you, then automatically we are not actually promoting this. We are in fact totally making the situation to be more worse than it is. So I supported what he has said, and this is religiously acceptable. When you go into an act of criminality, the Quran says you must be dealt with, because that is the only way it will deter others from doing it. As-sariq wa as-sariqatu faqtahu aydiyahuma. If you kill, you should be killed. If you steal, you should be dealt with based on the law. So I think what he has said is true. The analysis that came after, that the situation is not normal. It is true, it's not normal. But what do we do? Religiously, what we're supposed to do, we have stakeholders. We have politicians. We have the security personnel. We have our emirs and obas and chiefs. We have the religious leaders. We have market leaders. We have leaders of the youth. We have leaders that actually are stakeholders in this nation, especially and more critically, the media. We should have emergency meeting at all levels. In the local government levels, a committee should be formed under the leadership of the chairman of that local government. The state also should have a similar. The federal government should have a similar. This is what is at hand now. How do we go about achieving peace? Because without peace, even the looters will not have actually opportunity of going to loot. So if these committees work simultaneously, solutions are going to be given by all segments. This is what we are observing. This is what we see. This is what we go about, because now the situation needs emergency approach. We are only discussing one segment by saying, how do we deal with the looters? That is not the actually real problem now. The real actually way out now is to have solution to this problem with immediate effect. Now,
which problem?
The problem actually of violence, looting. If you see somebody pushing the whole tractor, taking it to his house with helpers, somebody pushing a motorbike, he cannot even ride it, but he knows how to push it. Now, if this continues, then automatically the nation will be actually in a state of confusion. Now, we want to stop this. How do we go about it? That is the solution I've just given now. That if stakeholders will come together, all stakeholders at the local government, state, and federal, and everybody is aware of what is going on. How do we give solution to this? Now, these solutions are going to be the immediate solution to the current, actually, problem that we are facing at hand.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Tajuddin Adegun. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll take some of the tweets that have come in from our viewers and then return to our guests.
Demands of #EndSARS movement. Immediate release of all arrested protesters. Justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensation for their families. Setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reports of police misconduct within 10 days. In line with the new Police Act, psychological evaluation and retraining to be confirmed by an independent body of all disbanded SARS officers before they can be redeployed. Increase police salary so that they are adequately compensated for protecting the lives and property of citizens. Federal government's response. On 11th October 2020, the Inspector General of Police dissolved the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, across the 36 states police commands and the Federal Capital Territory. On October 12th, President Muhammadu Buhari addressed the nation, stating the disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reforms. On 13th October 2020, the Inspector General of Police ordered all defunct SARS personnel to report at Force Headquarters, Abuja, for debriefing as well as psychological and medical examination. On 13th October 2020, the Presidential Panel on the Reform of SARS accepted the 5-point demand of the #EndSARS protesters. On 15th October 2020, the National Economic Council, NEC, directed the immediate establishment of state-based judicial panels of inquiry across the country to receive and investigate complaints of police brutality.
The second thing he said is that government needed to create another part of ministry. They were the youths of Nigeria, and this will reduce works of police in Nigeria. Federal government need to reform police immediately.
Mike Ayakwo tweets, force, force, force. Military force is the answer. Those who make peaceful resolutions impossible make forceful resolutions inevitable. Government should not negotiate with anyone now. It's belated. Military should apply maximum force to stem the tide. Those that don't value their lives should face the music. We don't need to make any more appeal to anybody to stop looting and stealing. Loot and face the bad consequences.
And Malgui here says, I suggest an all-inclusive approach to governance. Let there be transparency and people-oriented leadership where the masses are carried along. And growth-driven ideas be tailored towards salvaging us from this situation. We are all in, and this is taking us together, the rich and the poor. Peace, he says.
Nsima Splendid has this tweet. Said the solution will be as follows. 1, provide employment. 2, reorganize the police force by overhauling the recruitment structure. 3, improve governance, and dividends of democracy must be fed and not just read on the pages of newspapers.
Jose Chikwere, PhD, says the lasting solution is for the government to do everything listed, demanded by the youths, and total reform of government and governance in Nigeria.
Abdul Majid, for me personally, I feel as a people, we should change our ways and begin to think and behave right. Otherwise, one day we will have it rough because our recklessness is immeasurable.
Nandom Uyeb says government in its wisdom should know that a meeting of elders without the active involvement of the next generation shows that the future of such a nation is bleak, knowing that what to do, and rather knowing what to do and do promptly and acting on it is a ray of hope which will put smiles on faces of the majority. God
Jolly bless. Wesley, going forward, the lasting solution to the NSAS outbreak can be put to government personnel addressing issues that will foster transparency and equality in such a way that will suit parties without necessarily causing chaos.
Well, I like this tweet really here from Zidiep Chagoy Bature. It's short and simple. It says, the solution is doing the right thing. Full stop.
Oladotun Kadri, the federal government should understand NSAS is beyond NSAS. It's all about good governance, providing jobs, power, cheap transportation, reducing fair price, reducing NEPA tariff, cheap healthcare, security provision, etc.
Wofi Godwin, on his part, says, Buhari-led administration should dialogue with the youths and assure them of better governance henceforth. And number 2, he says, Nigerian government should start implementation of the promises made to the youths.
Comrade Ungala says dialogue with the leaders of the protesters is the only solution.
For Titus Mondenok, create jobs for the teeming youths to dose their suspicion for the big future. We can't continue to fill the job spaces with foreigners in the name of expatriates while our people can equally do the jobs when sufficiently trained. Nigerians do great things when there is the opportunity.
Ajibade, no one will really understand politics until they understand that the politicians are not trying to solve our problems. They are trying to solve theirs.
Well, Ibrahim Abdusalam Bello says protest is an accumulation of so many factors over the years. No government can bring a one-time solution to all the problems bedeviled in this nation. They should go for dialogue in the interest of all. Federal government should do their bit and help alleviate hunger in the land.
Chris Simeon, governments should be listening to the cry of the masses and attend to their needs.
First to Sakim Boyewa says government should demonstrate to our youths that they are relevant and that they will care for them. Government must force change within the police so that our youths can be less scared and start to build up faith in the police. The police must serve and protect us without brutalizing and murdering us.
All right, Suleiman Obagana, strengthening the security apparatus in managing crisis with international best practices to prevent destruction of life and property by hoodlums in times of protest is one way to go.
Let's continue our discussion, gentlemen. We have thereabouts some more minutes to round up. We're talking about NSAS protests, suing for peace, and all we're talking about is about peace. Professor Oshita said something that struck me a little bit, and that's talking about the collective guilt of Nigerians, which is sort of is fueling this whole crisis. And when I'm talking about peace, Dr. Tajuddin Ajigu, how do you look at this assertion of collective guilt that is prompting or pushing the youth towards behaving the way they are behaving vis-a-vis our elders too?
Well, we must be very, very conscious of what we are saying to the whole Nigerians. And especially religious leaders, we must build our background of what we are saying based on the holy books. You see, people are not having that confidence in our leaders. When I say this, I'm not saying all of us, but really there are some things that are making people not to have confidence. Leadership is a trust, a heavy trust for that matter. In fact, the consequence of being a leader by not discharging the responsibility on the day of Qiyamah, on the day of judgment, cannot be quantified. And that's why in Islamic teaching, some past generations run away from leadership because it is a trust. And if you do not discharge that trust, on the day of judgment, you are going to be in trouble. Let's assume you are tried and tempted to lead a nation like Nigeria of 200 million. And you are not able to discharge the trust. On the day of judgment, you are going to pay each and every Nigerian of what you have damaged. That's come down to the state level, local government level, and all levels. So leaders should try as much as possible to make sure they are doing the right thing. In fact, somebody whom you have just read, he said, the solution is to be doing the right thing. If the leaders are doing the right thing, these problems we are seeing is going to end naturally. It may not be today, it will take time. But where leaders...
I'm sorry to interject,
Thank you.
Dr. Adigo. On Good Morning Nigeria, where we've raised this point, usually on the occasion of religious celebrations. The leaders from whatever category, the elite, the political elite, the business elite, they go to church, they listen to the sermon. They come to the mosque, they listen to the sermon. Do the right thing. Why has it been so difficult to do the right thing?
Yes, it is difficult because man by nature, the way God himself created man is selfish. He must work against his own selfishness. He must work against the Satan. Allah says, "Inna aradna al-amanata ala samawati wal ardi wal jibali fa abayna an yahmilaha wa hamalaha al-insana innahu kana zaluman jahula." This trust, we have entrusted the mountains and the heaven and the earth, that they are coming down to discharge this trust. They refuse. But man, because of his selfish interest, he said, "Look, give me the trust. I'm going to be trustworthy." And he's oppressing himself, he's oppressing others, he's not actually discharging the trust. So man by nature is selfish. But it is those who struggle to battle with their heart that will be righteous. So what we are seeing now is the real nature of man, which means we must work on ourselves, the religious leaders, the political leaders, the market leaders, the media leaders, of course, too. All leaders actually must work together to see that they overcome their selfish interests.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adigun. Professor Oshita, let's bring you one more time. Of course, Professor Oshita, as we earlier indicated, is a professor of peace and development studies at the University of Calabar, in addition to some other positions as he's held in the past. Professor Oshita, we know that the looting and the wanton destruction, these are the fallout of the NSAS protest, hijacked, some would say, and Professor Ege had earlier drawn our attention to the fact that we need to address the causative issues in the harsh NSAS protest. But again, we recognize now that this is an unusual time. 2020 has been most unusual, and for us, some persons say that the harsh NSAS protest has introduced a new dimension in our national psychology. What, in your opinion, should be the building blocks of a new order, namely that will foster peace and development?
Thank you very much. Again, I think this is where we can start to address the root causes. I think that we need to organize a system of performance evaluation in governance that insists on delivery of certain basic things. As we are, we have a huge, governance architecture, and that again is part of what some of the messages from the youth have indicated, that government should be, trimmed down, or where government should be trimmed down. I think that if everyone who is involved in service delivery is performing maximally in wherever he or she is, the total, output is going to be such that to be addressing the specific needs for which every office, every MDA was set up, to render to the public. And in this situation now, I think I agree with what Dr. Adigun said about setting up levels of dialogue, platforms. Because at the end of the day, the community is the nearest to the individual. If we are able to have dialogue platforms that will help us begin to look at these issues closer, where the element of identity loss, the issue of anonymity in the context of, crime commission would be, minimized, then that will help us. I believe that going forward, we should explore using dialogue platforms at various levels. But we must not leave, we must not deviate from the radar, the issues that have been captured. And of course, years back, some of us who do this research, we try to see things ahead. This station interviewed me late 2017, and I said something that we might be on the way to somewhere very, very, traumatic.
Can we summarize maybe in the next 30 seconds? There's already a set of time.
Okay, yeah. So, well, let me focus on the issue of...
Just in the next 30 seconds because we're under.
Okay. Now, I think that we should forgive ourselves. We should be on the path to forgiveness, because forgiveness talks about the past. But we should also focus on reconciliation, because that is about the future, so that we can dissolve the anger, the fear, and all of the bitterness that is in the air, in order that government can be allowed to focus on development. As the tweets have said, let us focus on delivering life-touching, governance services.
Thank you.
I think that we'll be on the way to having peace.
Thank you so much, Professor Oshita. Professor Benjamin, maybe 30, 45 seconds. Can you please give us your parting thought on this issue of NSA suing for peace?
Well, NSA suing for peace, I just want to quickly mention that peace does not necessarily mean total avoidance of conflicts, because conflict helps the system. It's just that conflict should not degenerate to violence. But an aspect of the demands of the youth, which I just want to quickly address, which the government has also promised to look into, is the psychological evaluation and retraining of the police personnel. I want to encourage that the police should actually identify professionals in that area, psychologists preferably, who would be able to carry out such evaluation and assessment of the police. And this would cover the recruitment, ensuring that the people that are recruited into the Nigerian police, they are those who have the wherewithal in terms of mental or cognitive ability, the emotional disposition, as well as ability and competence in the management of things. Similar things happened some years ago during the First World War, whereby the Americans had some challenges with their recruits into the army. They invited a psychologist who was able to, the psychologists were able, that's the American Psychological Association, who came with psychological tests that were used in assessing their mental capacity and capability for warring. So I want to advise that the government of Nigeria should also utilize the professionals in this area. The Nigerian Psychological Association is there, which could be used. Then lastly, NSAS, I see it as a concept, a construct that goes beyond the police. And that is why we should address other issues that look inimical to the society. The issue of corruption is still there. Most times we hear of corrupt individuals, and we only hear in the news that some investigations are going on. We don't hear the outcome.
All right, Professor Ige, we're sorry we're pressed for time. We only have a couple of seconds left, actually. Professor of Psychology, University of Ibadan, joining us from our Ibadan Network studios. We appreciate your being with us this morning. We also would like to thank Professor Oshita, Professor of Peace and Development Studies, University of Calabar. Thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Tajuddin Adigun, Chairman, League of Imams Initiative in the FCT. I delight having you this morning. And Secretary, Christian Association of Nigeria, FCT, that's Bishop Michael Akpami. We appreciate your contribution to our discussion. So that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for being around. We're back tomorrow, same time as always, 7 in the morning. Until then, I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Yusuf Nadabusumu. Thanks for watching.